One in the chat box. We're so glad you're joining us. Sorry about that. All right, we're glad to see everybody tuning in from South Carolina, California, Maryland, Florida, Kansas, San Diego, New York. Met a mystery from Long Beach. Hi, Jan. I think we have quite a few people coming today, so we'll give it a few minutes for everyone to trickle in. But we're glad you're all here and supporting our authors today, so thank you for that.
We're so excited about Leslie's book launch today.
I know, it's very fun, isn't it?
Yes. Very excited. I almost got some little bit thing of champagne, but I have radio interviews starting at 6 a.m. tomorrow. So
make it more interesting, Leslie.
That's true. That's true. I had an interview today with a doctor, and all he wanted to talk about was Playboy. You never know what people are going to I thought it'd be all breast cancer.
Oh my.
I don't think I've had a radio interview since like 2001. So I applaud your publicist for getting you.
Oh,
that is really good.
Oh, wow.
You know, the hardback was all podcasts, and this one seems to be so many radio, but it's all over the country where a lot of the listeners here are today. So it's fun because I don't really have to, get dressed.
Oh, that's true. Right?
I have to ask you though, because I'm looking at my bookshelf and your bookshelf, Leslie, and why is yours so immaculate and perfect?
Because my husband's a writer also, and on this side are his books, and so we kind of like shift down.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and he teaches classes from over here too, and we've been on Friends in Fiction with Kristin, so I'm sure she's recognized.
Yeah,
some
of course.
And it's not my office. My office is different. This is the bookshelf area.
Tell us, as we're waiting for people to filter in, tell us about his last book. I mean, if you don't mind for a second.
Oh,
I think
wow.
he just is really cool. Does such neat stuff.
He was actually a philosophy major, and so he became the story expert by studying how stories work. And the new one is Anatomy of Genres, and it talks about how stories shape our lives. It's very cool. It talks about what each story means and how to imbue meaning in your story. And we actually got a chance to read several early books. People in this room to talk about how fabulous they are and why they're so good and what they mean to our lives. So it's pretty exciting. He's moving into that realm, but it's really fun to talk story. And this book was no exception. We discussed every chapter, and every time I think, oh, this is stupid, he makes it sound really smart by coming in from this analytical point of view. So it's very fun to be married to a writer.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. So Jennifer wrote that she just finished A Boob's Life and adored it. She loves your background, Leslie. Red Bra, R-E-D, and Red Bra, R-E-A-D. And thank you, Jessica, for saying that my bookshelves look wonderful too. They are packed, but they're not quite as organized as Leslie's. But
well, this is an homage to Susan's invitation, the Red Bra. It was genius. So I had to put on that probably needs to be washed. I've actually worn it recently, but
oh, that's funny. All right. Well, we have quite a few more people who are going to be trickling in, but I want to go ahead and get started because I don't want to get too far behind. So welcome everybody. Hello. Where our mission at Adventures by the Book is to, sorry, I'm losing my voice, is to connect people through the superpower of books. I'm Susan Macbeth. I'm delighted to be chatting with 4 amazing authors today, whom I will introduce in just a moment. If you're not familiar with Adventures by the Book, we hope you check out our website and our list of multi-sensorial experiences where you can dine with authors, attend teas, happy hours, wine tastings, and even travel around the world with authors. In fact, we just returned this last week from Sonoma, wine country, California, where we launched our new Reading Between the Vines series, pairing 8 fabulous authors with 8 fabulous wines. It was amazing. You can go to our website and find out more.
Can we get on the mailing list there? Can we get on the mailing list on your website?
Yes, you can get on our mailing list. Absolutely. Thank you for asking that.
I want to be on.
We want you to come. So many of you were some of the 1,400 readers, yes, 1,400, and over 70 authors who participated in our March 7th event with Kristin Harmel to fundraise for the Susan G. Komen Foundation in Kristin's honor. Thanks to everybody's generous book buys, we were able to donate $2,000 to Susan G. Komen. Wow. And you can still make a donation to the Susan G. Komen on Kristin's specific page, which I think Sarah is going to type into the chat box shortly. And you can, oh, there it is already. So you can check that out. Thank you, Sarah. We were so inspired by the March event that we decided to do a follow-up today, which serves to not only celebrate the paperback launch of, I find this funny because I'm holding up the hardcover, even though it's the paperback launch of Leslie Lehr's book, A Boob's Life, but also to have a frank conversation about breasts and breast cancer. The 4 authors featured today are not only talented writers, but they are all breast cancer survivors, and they are so courageous, and I underline that, courageous with a capital C, as to share their personal journeys with you in a frank conversation today that we hope will inspire you, educate, and motivate you to get your mammograms. As a reminder, you can type your questions in the chat box or Q&A box anytime during the event, and the authors will answer them as time permits at the end of the event. The first half of this program will feature Leslie in conversation with the 3 authors about their respective breast cancer journey and stories. And the second half, I'll be chatting with Leslie about her new book. So let's get started. Leslie Lehr is a prize-winning author, screenwriter, essayist, and story consultant whose essays have been published in the New York Times Modern Love column and the Huffington Post. In her book, A Boob's Life, which is being released in paperback today, as I mentioned, and which you can purchase on our website using the link in the chat box that Sarah's going to add in. Leslie explores the surprising truth about women's most popular body part with vulnerable and witty frankness and true nuggets of American culture that will resonate with everyone who has breasts or loves them. Welcome, Leslie, and congratulations on the paperback launch today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Susan. And I couldn't be more thrilled and honored and excited to share this day with you. I've been looking forward to it for a long time. And actually, my publisher asked me if we wanted to do the paperback for Breast Cancer Month. And I thought I would much rather have it for Mother's Day, because it really hits mothers where our hearts are, where we embrace the people that we love. And it's every month. Every women are, in jeopardy all the time. So I'd like to introduce my other esteemed authors that I'm honestly so grateful and cannot believe you agreed to come and join us tonight. Kristin Harmel is a New York Times, USA Today, and #1 international best-selling author of Force of Vanishing Stars, The Book of Lost Names, The Winemaker's Wife, plus a dozen other novels that have been translated into more than 30 languages. I didn't even know there were more than 30 languages. Her new novel, The Paris Daughter, comes out June 6th. It already has rave reviews, and it's a historical novel about 2 mothers, perfect for Mother's Day, who must make unthinkable choices in the face of Nazi occupation. It is available for pre-sale already, and it's already out there. You can find it anywhere. Kristin just finished Radiation not long ago, and is in that sweet spot between the time when she starts meds, the whole other journey for a few years. And she's been on a mission to inspire women to schedule their mammograms, because early detection does save lives. 40% of women do find, are self-detecting and find it early. And many of us here did also. And if you're one of those 1,400 women who joined us at the Susan G. Komen event in March, thank you so much and welcome. And next we have Laura Zigman, who is the author of 5 novels, including Separation Anxiety, which was optioned for television by the production company that produced Mayor of Easttown. So it's high quality. And Animal Husbandry, which was made into a movie, Someone Like You, starring Hugh Jackman and Ashley Judd. And I have to say, I love that movie, and I started stalking Laura way back when. After I saw that movie, and you don't know how we know each other because we never actually met, but it was that movie I started following you everywhere because I loved it.
Love that
so much. Anyway, I'll just shut up about that. Anyway, the other book was Dating Big Bird and Her and Piece of Work. She's also ghostwritten nonfiction, so multi-talented, including Eddie Izzard's New York Times bestseller, Believe Me. She's contributed to the New York Times, the Washington Post, and of course the HuffPost. And she produced a popular online series of animated videos called Annoying Conversations. And people keep recommending this to me all the time who find out that you're here tonight. It is really funny. And the latest book is Small World, a heartfelt novel about 2 offbeat and newly divorced sisters who move in together as adults and finally reckon with their childhood. But I have to say that description, Laura, I don't know who wrote it, but it does not do this book justice, because it's really about another sister. And I've heard you talk about it on podcasts, and then I read it immediately, and it was kind of story that just haunted me. And it's a kind of story also that it's written so well. Those of you who appreciate that, definitely check out this book. And then Jamie Brenner, who just looks so cool on her social media with the glasses and the pearls and lipstick. I always admire that. It takes me a lot to work up to that. Anyway, she writes beach reads with a twist, including the national bestseller, The Forever Summer, Blush, and her latest, Guilt. People magazine calls her books a delightful escape wherever you are. And Publishers Weekly says Guilt is a beach read that sparkles like a diamond, which is a little bit of a play on the plot, because Guilt is a luxurious and richly compelling novel about a famous family jewelry dynasty. And if anyone is a fan of Tiffany's, you might really like this book. And the hidden past that could topple it all. And I have to say, this is another book that's way better than the description, because I always figure beach reads are just fun for summer, but I devoured this book in 2 days. And it's partly because I really love jewelry, but also the complex relationships and the way she described this beach town. I totally just want to move there. So it's not like lightweight, it's just fun, but really it was a wonderful read. I loved it.
Thank you.
And so anyway, I'm excited that all three of you have these incredible new books out. It seems to be the season. Everybody's been working hard and getting our stuff out. So it's really an honor that you're here tonight to talk about something that's not your books. And that's about an experience that far too many women go through. My kitty just sat down here on my table. So if you see her tail wagging, that's what's going on. Okay. Anyway, but I'd like to start out, we don't have a lot of time, and I'd like to find out, just going around and find out how you others found out that you had breast cancer. And I guess, Kristin, do you want me to start with you, since you were first one I introduced?
Sure. My diagnosis was just this past October. And I found out, as I have I think been mentioning probably way too frequently on social media in an attempt to remind people, I found out through a mammogram. I didn't feel a lump. There was no reason to think anything was wrong. I didn't have any symptoms. And I went in for a mammogram correctly on schedule. I was maybe a month behind just because I couldn't get booked in at the right time. And they said, there's something that looks a little suspicious, which wasn't weird. I have cysts. And so, I thought, all right, well, that's fine. I'm sure it's just a cyst. But they said, we'd like to do a biopsy. Got a little bit nervous and thought, okay, but it's probably still just a cyst. And it was not, in fact, a cyst. It was a cancerous tumor of about 11 millimeters in diameter. So very small, but very aggressive. And so they removed that. I was diagnosed October 25th, or at least I got the news that day, and had a lumpectomy on November 3rd, and have been in treatment until just very recently.
It's amazing just to think that a year ago, none of this had happened. I mean,
Yeah,
it's amazing how our lives can change so quickly and unexpectedly. How about you, Laura? How were you diagnosed?
Yeah, I was diagnosed in the late summer of 2006. I'd been having regular mammograms since probably my 20s. When I lived in New York, I would march around with my film from one doctor to the other, because I was convinced, given my family history, I had a paternal aunt who died of breast cancer, and my mother had breast cancer that was caught early, but she was 42. So I had moved back to Boston. I was getting my regular mammograms, just like Kristin said. And I had one of those weird ones where they're like, boy, you have dense tissue. I think it's time for an MRI. So I had the MRI, which, if anyone has had a breast MRI, it's like almost comical, but not. You face down in this machine.
Like
and I think we can
Yeah.
use our imaginations for where your breasts go. And anyway, and of course, they saw something. And what they saw was something that I'd never heard of. They said it was stage 0, DCIS, and they recommended here in Boston. I had the good fortune of being treated by people at Dana-Farber and the Faulkner Hospital, and they were like, yep, it's all over one breast, and even though it's stage 0, we recommend a mastectomy, and we also recommend a double mastectomy given your history. So that's what I did, and in the final path report, it turned out to be also all over the second breast, but it didn't show up in the MRI. And at the time, the recommendation was to have a surgical option. I also had reconstruction at the same time. So I was in bed watching Food Network for a long time. There was no social media, but I, was the right decision for me given my family history. So that's what I did.
Wow, that gave me goosebumps. That's so scary to find out that you did the right thing. Just, it's a lot of faith there. How about you, Jamie? How were you diagnosed?
So in 2013, a routine mammogram, and I don't think I was even 40 yet. Maybe I was 40, found DCIS, and it was very confusing because, and Laura and I were talking about this a bit beforehand, there's a lot of conflicting opinions about what DCIS is. Like, is it cancer? Is it pre-cancer? And so I kind of split the baby and I just said, I'll have a lumpectomy, but I'm not doing radiation or medication. Like, I'll just take it out and I think that should be fine. And then 4 years later, another mammogram caught it, that it had come back. And, but I didn't find out till after surgery. It came back as stage 1. But at that point I'd had the mastectomy. So, and I guess we can all talk about how many decisions there are and how much conflicting information there is out there. And I think that's why I think it's so important to talk about it, because I feel like you could really go down a wormhole of misinformation or conflicting information. And I don't even think there is one right answer.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to trust your gut. I was also diagnosed after a mammogram, and I thought I was so healthy, and I didn't know if I had it in my family, and it was just a real surprise and tiny. And my doctor was like, "Oh, you can wait 6 months." And she asked the radiation guy, or the guy who did the mammogram, and he said, "Well, if it's my wife, I'd just do a biopsy." And so I thought, whatever, I'll do biopsy. And sure enough, and it was so small, but by the time I got a doctor and everything, it had tripled in size. And, had I waited 6 months, I would have been dead. So it was just this like, okay, I'll just go along with it. And then then my doctor said, lumpectomy will be fine. And then he's like, well, not quite. And then, well, you're gonna lose your hair. Well, so I ended up having to do everything, and it was a shock. And I think what surprised me the most is that it became such a lifestyle, taking care of my health. It's like you have so many appointments and so many things that you have to do. And then when it ends, it's like now I look at my medicine cabinet and think, I don't have any medicine here. It's amazing. I had like 12 different things, and then 5, and then 1 that had all kinds of side effects. And of course, I still have a lot of side effects. But I was wondering if you ladies, if there's anything, and obviously, Kristin, you're still in it, but how did having it change the way you live now? Is there anything you do differently or have a bigger awareness of, or did you just like, oh, that was then and you're on your way? What about, Kristin, you're still in it, so.
I think it's very much changed the way I think about things. It's funny. Gosh, I wrote a book called The Winemaker's Wife. I love wine. I don't ever overdrink. That's not something I do. It's not like I'm sitting here having, 4 glasses of wine a night, but I'm very conscious, even when I have a single glass now, that can be a contributing factor to breast cancer and to breast cancer recurrence. So it's changed the way I think about everything I put into my mouth. I think about, and who's to say, I don't think any of those things necessarily caused it, but you begin to think about how all the environmental factors and all the things you do and the decisions you make possibly factor into something like that happening. So I think I think of it 50 times a day in terms of not in relation to wine 50 times a day, but 50 times a day just in response to very small decisions.
Right.
Do I have this for lunch or do I have that? Do I spend the extra 5 minutes on the exercise bike? And like you said, I think you're just very conscious of your health in a way that maybe you weren't before.
Yeah, my oncologist actually told me that they had just discovered studies that said more than 2 drinks a week raises your vulnerability to breast cancer the way that smoking cigarettes would to lung cancer.
Wow.
So I'm also like, well, I'm only going to drink tonight. And then, I have to kind of like try to balance it out. But I think that stress is also a big contributor. And it's something I talk about in the book. In Ohio, where you and I both used to live for a little while, they actually discovered a trigger gene that stress can lower your immune system for the kind of cancers that affect women. And I feel like as caretakers, it's something that we need to be really aware of. And like when it hits your breast, where you care for people and love for people, even if you don't have children, we tend to take care of people, and there is the stress. And so it is a life kind of aware. I had a woman who always said, oh, you have to, in chemo, you should change, smell the flowers now. And I thought, I always smell the flowers. I love, I'm a positive person, but being aware of trying to take it easier and gentler and kinder to yourself, that's kind of what I do. What about you, Laura? Has it changed how you live?
Yeah, it's weird because my situation, look at your cat.
No.
My situation kind of like went straight down the middle. Like I didn't have, it was stage 0. So I had the surgical treatment. There was no radiation and there was no chemo. So I always felt like I got off easy, except that I had this massive amount of surgery, which is, you come in and they say, okay, you need a double mastectomy. And in the same breath, they're selling you reconstruction surgery. And they sell it by saying, you're going to get a tummy tuck. And of course, they all mean well. And my whole surgical team were women. And so they were great they make no mistake. They were fabulous. I love them. They did a great job. But, you're in a fog of getting a diagnosis and trying to, decide what you're going to do. And suddenly you're like, oh, a tummy tuck. And before you know it, you're signing on for everything that means. And they're saying, oh, you'll be up and around in, 2 to 3 weeks. Well, if you've had a C-section or if you had your appendix out, that's just absolute ridiculous. I won't swear on this thing, but so I had it. And of course it was like, I'm still recovering. I mean, I was in bed for most of January and February because the surgical mesh used to keep, my core in place, given the kind of reconstruction surgery I had. I could barely move. I thought it was damaged or whatever. And it gets very tight. And of course, I'm really glad that my surgeons were great. But even when I called them in January and said, I'm like immobilized, and I think it might be the mesh. And my surgeon was like, no, we've never had a problem with the mesh. And I'm like, well, go online and you'll see lots of people have problems with mesh. So for me, it's always been a physical situation where my mobility and all that. And yet I hate to complain about it because I'm super grateful, feel very lucky. And if, and the inconvenience is that, then so be it. But I did not have the chemo, the radiation, and then the medicine afterwards. So I feel like I kind of got off easier.
I mean, you're alive, but still having to deal with any sort of ordeal is related to this. People don't realize how common it is because we don't complain about it, How about you, Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of all this stuff. I guess once it made me instantly old in the sense that I was in my late 30s, early 40s. I still felt like I was in my 20s, and then there was this sudden dividing line of before and after where, okay, I might be 44, but I felt like I had this knowledge and fear of a much older woman. And it changed, there's no more illusion, you're not a kid anymore, you're not invincible. But the upside was it really freed me from this kind of hamster wheel I was on about trying to stay young or worrying about being beautiful, in the sense that you have this radical change to your body. And then you go through a lot of physical pain. And then after that, I'm like, I can't ever volunteer for a Botox injection. I'm never going to go to a doctor recreationally because I never want to see a doctor again unless it's like life or death. Yeah. And it was very freeing. Like, so to now I just, I put my energy and I'm not a health freak. I don't like work out. I do limit the wine, but to me, it was just this like letting go of the illusion that you can hold it all together. Like you can't, like things are going to happen. And there's a certain freedom in just like accepting that.
Wow. That's really a kind of a brilliant philosophy, that acceptance of life is in session and we got to roll with it and, kind of take it as it is, but be happy or, satisfied as much as we can. I guess now that we've been all through this, I get calls all the time from people who have a friend who has it and they want me to talk to or something. And I really feel like Kristin's doing, passing it forward. I'm happy to talk to anybody. It is something that happens so suddenly and we get so much information so fast and we have to make all these decisions. What would you guys and here, isn't this weird? I'm saying guys, and I'm writing this book about boobs and how we need to be. And although, anyway, I'll just shut up. My question for Kristin is for you. What would you tell a friend with breast cancer? And even the new chapter in my book, I talk about going back to Ohio, and I would say there's 2 chapters in the book about breast cancer. It's what I get the most questions about. People want to know, you know, what they should do, what do they need, but mostly they want to know how to help a friend. And 1 in 8 women get it. That means at a certain age, we're going to know someone who knows someone or someone in the family, and it's not just pink socks on football players, you know? So, Kristin, what would you tell someone to how to help a friend or loved one with breast cancer? Just any little tips, nothing like, you know, serious, but just like anything that can make their life easier, or things that are surprising, anything that occurred to you having experienced it.
How to help a friend. Would say encourage a friend to do as much research as they can, but also to listen to their doctor. There has to be a good balance between the two, you know, because I think some of us, I think it's easy to go down the research rabbit hole and feel like you know what you're talking about because you've done all the reading and read all the message boards and whatever. But that's not a complete picture. If you're going to go down a research rabbit hole, go down a research rabbit hole of journals, of medical journals, and figure out what the statistics say, and then bring those statistics to your doctor and make sure what your doctor is saying matches up with what you feel based on that. I think that's important. Educate yourself and talk to your doctor. But in terms of how to support a friend, I think check in often, send chocolate as Leslie did. And keep reminding your friend that there's going to be an after, that breast cancer is so treatable. There's so much research that goes into treating this now, particularly if it's caught relatively early. There's going to be an after, and checking in the after is important too, I think, because it's a long journey. The journey doesn't end when your treatment ends. There are a lot of
Years.
Yeah. I don't know that the journey ever really ends, but
Yeah.
you know, just be a friend.
All right, thank you. What about you, Laura? Any tips?
Yeah, I have a couple. So I usually get sent people who are having surgery. That's
Okay.
my jam.
Your
So
area.
my tips are get really long tongs, or if you have a friend who is going through, even, you know, I mean, we've all had some kind of surgery, I think so. But the kind that I had especially, but any kind of breast surgery, get really long tongs so that in bed you can reach stuff without someone being home.
Whoa.
Get a like a Tempur-Pedic foam slanted pillow,
Totally agree with that. The
because
wedge pillow. Oh my
a
God.
wedge, especially the kind that comes in like 3 parts. So it's like the legs, the back, everything, because it's really hard to sit up. Your whole core is messed up for a while. Just in those, especially in those early days when you're home from the hospital. And the third thing, my big tip is I tell the truth. So if someone calls me and says they're considering having the kind of surgery that I had, or a similar kind of surgery, or even just a mastectomy, I am very honest. I do not subscribe to pinkwashing. I think it's great to be positive, and I admire that, and I try to be as positive as possible, of course. But if someone's going to call me and ask me, I will tell them the truth. I will be as hopeful as I can about it in terms of, like, you know, all that. But I will say it's going to suck, and it will stop sucking. But it's not, you know, it's not 3 weeks. It's not 6 weeks for the kind that I had.
Yeah.
And just in general, just like, you have to let people feel the fact that it's not going to be fun, and then it will be over. But that's my tip. Those are my tips.
So anyone wants the truth, DM Laura. I'm sorry about that.
I've got to also add, my husband made this sign because it became the thing that I said like throughout the whole treatment. It's the only way through it is through it. So he put that sign up in our garage. The only way through it is through it. And I think that's an important thing to keep reminding your friend too, that it like you said, Laura, it's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy. You don't want to, you know, make it all sound bright and sunny and wonderful when it's not, but you have to move through it. The only way through it is through it.
And what about you, Jamie? Any tips?
I think the one thing I did that I would tell anyone to do is, if at all possible, always bring someone with you to your appointments, because there's so many
100%.
important decisions that have to be made, and you cannot be emotional and absorb all the information. So for me, just having someone there, like taking notes to talk about it with afterwards, like, wait, didn't the doctor say this? And like, no, you weren't hearing this part. And that to me was invaluable. So if you can wrangle someone, or if you're the friend, offer to go with and just be that second set of ears to process the information, so the patient can be emotional and you can be sort of the second brain in the room for them.
That's
Yeah,
great.
that's really smart. I think some people recommend having a friend with a notepad or even a recorder. For me, I think that the tips that stick with me the most are the more literal ones, like the wedge pillow. I mean, I didn't have immediate reconstruction, but I could rarely ever sleep lying down because I was so nauseous. And so being able to have something up that, you know, that's not going to get sore, that was one of the best gifts. Soft hats were really great when you're bald because it's very cold. And I think the most important thing for me was, had I had children, I would want someone to help me with childcare. I would want someone to say, how can I help you? When can I take your kids out? Can I bring you food and like enough with the soups? What would you like? I would say, ask them what they want, because I actually I ended up making a list because some people I did not want to see. They were the kind of friends who were too much, or, you know, I would have to do so much for them. I just wanted someone to watch Hallmark movies with me, or to pick something up at the store for me, or to keep track of all the meds, or to, when I was able to walk me around the block so that in case I fell, you know. So I think it's really important to allow the person to tell you what they want and just be gentle. And I also agree with that reaching out thing. I think I was never so close to anybody I grew up with in Ohio until someone found out I got sick. And I started getting like emails and notes, and it's like, it is lonely. So reaching out to someone, even if it's just the tiniest little missive, it's like, oh, you're not alone, you know, and it really can make you feel like you're part of humanity, I think, instead of just this person who this weird random thing happened to that unfortunately isn't so random.
Well,
But
you know what? And I would say keep reaching out. Like, that's such
yeah,
a good point, because I feel like sometimes when you say it for the first time, everyone sends their support, which is so
yeah,
lovely and so wonderful. But I will say sometimes it was just the random text that I'd get on a Tuesday, like a few
yeah.
days into my
Thinking of you.
chemo cycle, that like
Yeah,
those were the ones, and they all lifted me up. But I mean, those sometimes were the ones that I needed the most and didn't even know I needed
just don't know.
until I got those messages. So,
Yeah.
you know, keep remember that it's not just the diagnosis, it's going to be a long journey, and if you can check in with your friends, that's important.
Absolutely. I know that we have to wrap up. I want kind of to do the last questions combined, and I know that I am starting to think of people who get breast implants as kind of just the flip side of people who get reconstruction, because breasts are such a part of a woman's identity and gender issue. Even trans people, they either get them off or on. It's the first thing people see coming in the room, you know, what sex you are. And I know there's a lot of choices now that we're not always aware of going flat or being tattooed or whatever. So I kind of am interested in knowing also, this speaks a lot to body image and how we feel as women in our bodies. So I kind of like my last question to be, you know, it sounds like most of us kept our breasts or had reconstruction. And I know Laura felt pressured about making those decisions so quickly. But I'm interested in finding out how, if it's changed how you feel about your breasts and your body now and your identity as a woman. So I guess, Kristin, we're starting off with you.
Sure, but
Too
before I
many
answer your
questions?
question, I'm just going to have like a little PSA to everyone out there saying, if you've not yet read A Boob's Life, it is out in paperback. That is a nice reduced price, right? Paperback's a little bit less expensive than hardcover. And tonight's the night to buy it. And if you're enjoying this conversation tonight, buy it from Adventures by the Book. It helps keep these kind of conversations going.
Yeah.
But please do consider buying it this week. First week sales are really important. So
Thank you so much. And there are
yes.
pictures.
Yeah, there you
Flat
go.
and
Perfect.
full and scarred and hairless and hair. Anyway,
So yeah,
how do you feel?
it is a great book. So I had a lumpectomy, and my breasts don't look that different. It was a small tumor taken out. My breast surgeon was excellent. The incision actually went right along the edge of my nipple. Like it's, if you saw me, you might not necessarily know that I'd had anything done if you didn't look closely. If you look closely, be able to tell. But I look in the mirror and I see something completely different than I saw before. And that has only happened to me once, I feel like, before this. And it was when I was breastfeeding my son. I saw my breasts as something other than they had been before. They were a source of nourishment and a source of life. And like I realized their power.
Yeah,
And
they can give life and they can kill you.
yeah, exactly. And this has been another complete reframing of my body. But I don't know. I think I look in the mirror now and I think I just see something I'm proud of, not because they're here or not here or whole or not whole, but just because they're part of me. And every day that I get to be alive and be here and inhabit this body, whatever this body looks like, is something to be really proud of, I think.
I have goosebumps. Yeah, there's a lot of gratitude and for our bodies just keeping us alive and whatever it took. So how about you, Laura? How are you feeling about your body? I know you've been
Yeah,
through
I mean, I turned 60 this summer, and I was thinking a lot about, when I was diagnosed, I was 44, and I made the right decision at the time. I mean, I felt pressured for reconstruction, but I was, I was young, and I thought, oh, for sure, I definitely wanted reconstruction. I think about now, if I were diagnosed at this age, and that's not to say that women aren't, can be hot in their 60s and 70s and all that, but if it were happening to me now and going flat and being tattooed in a really cool artistic way was an option, I would probably, I think I would do that as opposed to having the kind of surgery, the kind of massive reconstruction that I had. But it really depends on the age you're at and what's available. And it wasn't really the thing then.
No.
And so there's so many more choices now, I think, depending on who you are, what age, what your gender issues are. It's there's just a lot more choices.
And also when you made that decision, or when that decision was pressured by you, it had only been 6 or 8 years since insurance actually covered reconstruction.
Yes.
That was something Bill Clinton put into law after his mother died. So I think that was 1998. So it was such a new thing. And it was, of course, mostly men doctors thought that's what you wanted. And now it could get paid for. So, before that, people didn't do it. So that has a lot to do with it too. But that's a really good point. I think it does depend how old you are, how you want to feel in your body. How about you, Jamie?
So I had an implant, not reconstruction. I consider the same. Like, yes, like I reconstituted the situation there, and I just for me, I was like, I don't want to think about, like, I don't want reminders of this all the time. Like, I want to get better. And then I want to pretend this never happened, like, to be honest with you. So when I caught sight of myself in the mirror, I just want to look as much as like I used to look as possible, because I didn't want to let this like change so much, like where it had to live with me. Like, I just wanted to move on. So like, I just wanted to put everything back together, or like as much as you can. And like, at least in passing, like I just looked the same. And that's just what I needed to do. And even though it's like, you never feel the same. And of course you can never, like, there's no magic. It's like it's a simulation of what used to be. But in time, like now 5 years later, that is a part of me just as much as my natural side is. So I feel completely like normal. And that's just what I wanted from the beginning, to get to the point where I'm not thinking about it. And when I see myself in the mirror, I'm not reminded. It's just me. It's not like me post-cancer.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that the trend of younger women getting breast cancer, and also a lot of younger women are getting tested. And so the BRCA gene is coming up. And for those of you who are listening, only 10 to 15% of women have the BRCA gene, almost 85% do not. But the ones that do, generally these days, many people are getting mastectomies, and the young people tend to a lot be getting, reconstruction right away, because they didn't have it. They don't want to know about it. They just want to move on. And I think it's great that we're able to talk about it, share our boob stories, and have these options so that we can live a full life and have them not be dictated by our breasts. And for me, I felt getting out of the shower and seeing my breasts after I had not looked at them on purpose for a few years after I was finally getting better, and then thinking, oh, I'm back to everything, and then seeing them and realizing they were not quite right. That's what made me write this book in the first place, because I was like so upset about it. And I didn't understand why I was so upset about it, because I had never prided myself on my breasts, but I'd certainly gone through not having them and getting them and showing them to get a man, and then hiding them for work, and then breastfeeding, and then being saggy, and then ultimately getting implants, and then getting breast cancer. It's like there was so much wrapped up in it. And in fact, that's why that night my husband accused me of being obsessed. And I thought, I'm a feminist, I'm not obsessed with breasts. And I, turned on the TV and someone was telling a boob joke. And I realized we're all obsessed, and it affects all of us, all of our lives. And so I feel like the most important thing for us to do, really the reason I wrote this book, and I know Susan and I would talk about it, was because I was trying to decide if I should fix them again, like they were broken. But what I would love for us to do is realize how much we're judged by them, and how much when we judge our own breasts, we're also judging other people by their breasts, and it affects everything. It affects how we're treated, it affects the laws and stuff like that. And breast cancer is just such a plague. Over 2 million women have died in it. More people have died of breast cancer than in World War I, Americans, World War I, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam together. All these women. And it used to be called the women's disease until, the very, 40 years ago, which is very recent for some of us and not for others. But it's incredible. So many women, it was the highest killer, and no one labeled it until women were able to go to medical school. And that's why there's been so much progress right now. And that's why people like me and Kristin, I think you had Herceptin. I was like, without this drug, I mean, I know people who did not get this particular drug who I saw in chemo and died because they were too late. And so the research, the money that we put into Susan G. Komen and helping people through chemo to get this kind of treatment and have them feel good about doing what they need to do, really saves lives. And when we save women's lives, we save families, and that's, so it's everybody. So I want to thank you all so, so much for sharing this fabulous day with me and for talking about your experience. It is scary, and I'm not the kind of person who puts my diagnosis out. I think it's like TMI. I like to have everything happy, helps me be happy. But to share what it's really like going through, people do not know, and it's probably because we really don't want to relive it. And it's hard. It's a hard thing, but the more we can do to help other people not get it or be treated early to get over it and help families is really great. So thank you so, so much. And for the people listening, I know I'm going to turn this over to Susan. We're going to talk about maybe some more fun things about my book, but these wonderful ladies and incredible authors, all best-selling authors, are going to stick around for a Q&A. So if you have some questions for them, write them down and hang on. Okay. Thank you.
And just to reiterate that, I mean, a special thanks to all four of you. It takes tremendous courage to go what you've gone through already, and then to share that story with everybody and be candid and vulnerable about it, just so you can educate others and inspire others. And we're so grateful to you. There's so much love and prayers and the good thoughts coming your way through the chat box. You'll have a chance to read through those, but everybody is rooting you on and grateful for you. And how you can thank these authors multiple ways. The first and most important is go get your mammogram if you haven't done so. You've heard how important that is from all of these women. I hope you do that. The other thing is you can go to the Susan G. Komen and Kristin Harmel fundraising page, which Sarah, if you could type that in again in the chat box, that would be great. You can make a donation that will go to research and support and education. You can also purchase a copy of Leslie's book, now out in paperback as of today, A Boob's Life. You can learn more about her own journey and just, America's obsession with our breasts. And also you can go and support Kristin by pre-ordering a copy of her new book, The Paris Daughter, which comes out in a month. You can pre-order it on our website. It will come with a signed book plate. So make sure to support our authors in their journeys, and also our Jamie and Laura's books as well. You can purchase any and all of their books on our website. And just kind of thank them for their bravery and support them in their journey. So thank you. We're going to go ahead and get started with a few questions for Leslie about her new book, and then we'll go to audience Q&A. I know some of you have already been typing your questions in the chat box and in the Q&A button, so thank you for that. Leslie, I know you already talked about what inspired you to write a book about boobs, but do you want to elaborate further, or have you kind of said what you wanted to say about that?
Oh, well, I could elaborate for hours. I never thought I would write a book about boobs. And every time I'm interviewed, people are like, well, you'll talk about anything. It's like, boobs they're kind of, there's 150 nicknames for boobs, right? It's not like they always feel like they're part of us. And I guess I am obsessed with breasts. I mean, I have a daughter who just got engaged, and I'm very nervous about what my future mother-in-law thinks about me writing a book about boobs. It's a weird thing, and yet it is amazing. And I think that what fascinated me is that no one had written a book like this before. I wanted to know, what's the deal? Our whole entire lives are shaped by boobs, and I had to write it from my perspective and then feed in, oh, what songs was I listening to? What advertisements were out? What was on TV? To see how much I was influenced about how I felt about my body, and how everyone treated me because of it, and how our laws were because of it. And in fact, the new last chapter has to do with the last 2 years. And I was riding like a beauty queen in a parade in my hometown in Ohio. And I always wanted to be in that parade, but I didn't have the boobs to be a beauty queen. And then writing a book about boobs got me in the parade. So that was kind of interesting. But it was also right after Roe v. Wade fell, and I was in a small town in Ohio. So it was a very interesting experience that I was able to update all the facts in the book. But I think when the first night I decided to write the book, the reason I was so compelled was because I went online. We had just moved. And first I looked at the picture. My husband went to sleep after we had this thing about, was I obsessed with my boobs? He went to sleep, date night was off, and I was like, of course, up and awake. And so I looked at the first picture in one of the boxes, was me and it's in the book, it's of me and my sister and my mom, all in little red bikinis. And my sister, I was 3, she was 1, and of course could not keep the red strip, of fabric over her nipples. And even looking at the picture, I laughed. I thought this was so funny that she couldn't cover her nipples. And then I realized, oh my gosh, if I knew at 3 that it was taboo to have to cover your nipples, then there's something with breasts, And so I went online and I started Googling, there's got to be a book about it. And when I Googled breasts, it was all breast cancer and chicken recipes. And so I thought, okay. Yeah, so I thought I'll Google boobs, and it was all porn. And it's women are defined that way. Our breasts are either for babies or they're sexy. And I found out this history of when I was young, how it happened then. There was this trifecta of Playboy and TV and advertising and baby formula, and suddenly everyone had to be in Playboy, and it made all of us. And then small breasts were a disease, the FDA said in 1982. And we grew up with breasts being one way or the other. And I feel like the difference between how we're judged, if we're motherly or if we're sexy, women are so much more complex. So I had to write the book. That's long answer to a short question, but
well, we're glad you did. And you mentioned, and we all know that there's a million different names for boobs, breasts. Why did you not choose to be anatomically correct and call it a breast life?
Oh, because it sounds clinical, and I'm embarrassed. I don't want to. I mean, when I say, oh, I wrote a book about breasts, then you think it's about breast cancer, or it's like that feels personal. But to call, oh, I wrote about my boobs, that feels distancing, because I'm so used to them being objectified. Now, I couldn't say a tits life, because that's like, I wouldn't call them tits. My first husband used to call like cars that were vintage. He'd say, ooh, that car is tits. And I'd be like, ooh. It was embarrassing to me, But there's so many, I mean, and most of them are food, flapjacks, watermelons, I mean, come on, it's ridiculous. So for me, it was just an easy way to talk about this body part that we are identified by, that men look at within 200 milliseconds of walking in a room. That's biological instinct. But advertising has co-opted those eyeballs, and we don't have to put up with them looking at them or judging us by them, and judging ourselves, by them. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so your book, A Boob's Life, is both a memoir and a cultural history. I'm curious why you decided to tell your story that way.
It was the only way I could understand why I felt this way, why I had this love-hate relationship of my breasts my entire life, and there's nothing more political than what's inside of our bras, how we are. And when I just discovered what was happening during these times and why I actually, wanted to be a cheerleader when I was a feminist, and why I actually tried out for Playboy, but didn't want to show my boobs, but it felt like, oh, you had to do that to be pretty. And then I was so proud when I was breastfeeding, and I had no breasts, and I wore my flat chest like a shield. And I thought people with breasts or big breasts were tacky and stupid. And, and it was because of the ads I was seeing and the magazines I was reading, and clearly, the laws that were being made in their kitty. And, oh, well, that reminds me, because, humans are the only mammals that have breasts our whole entire lives. This kitty, I mean, she's not going to have babies, but if she did, she would only have, nipples and breasts as long as she was in childbearing years, and we're not. And why do you think that is? I think maybe there's some Darwinian thing that guys like breasts, and so they mate with people with breasts. I don't know, but all those things made me curious. And the only way that I could do my story, it wasn't just my story, it was the story of America. And why are we like this? Why do women with big breasts get more money on TV? Why do we have to hide our breasts to have jobs? I mean, Hillary Clinton, when she showed an inch of between her jacket and her thing in not that long ago, it was called Cleavage Gate. The Washington Post wrote a huge article about her when she was on C-SPAN, which nobody watches anyway. And they only talked about that her chest was showing. It's like our culture is whacked. And so it was the only way that I could write it, to try to understand. And I can't solve this problem. I mean, we cannot fight biology, but I just feel like the more people who are aware, and all the funny things I did, I mean, practically popping out of my wedding dress to my second husband because they automatically put bumpers in for, I mean, there was a show called Bridalplasty that Juliana Rancic had on E! Channel that gave boob jobs to new brides. I mean, breasts are a thing. My dad went to Princeton, and there were Playboys at the library for free. I mean, this is how the culture has grown, and the people who run the culture. And I think it has to do with why it's so hard to get support for breastfeeding, why we're 33rd on the list of family support laws, why we finally get Time's Up and Me Too, and then laws are rolled back. So I think that was the only way I could tell the story. And it was also, a good way to procrastinate by doing all the research. But so I was able to have a lot of comedy and humor and personal stuff, but also facts, and there's a lot of fact pages like about Victoria's Secret and laws and things like that between the chapters.
Yeah, you did a great job. And then Justine wrote, I'm glad you used the non-clinical and non-distancing boob in the title and brought in the cultural aspect of our breasts. And Anita commented, thank you so much for this presentation. My mom died 43 years ago today. Anita, I'm so sorry. Due to breast cancer, the advances in research and treatment are great since her time and needs to continue. Thank you so much for sharing. So I'm glad you're here, Anita, and I'm so sorry for your loss. We're going to be winding up soon because we want to get to the Q&A section. But Leslie, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the fun or interesting facts or information you found when you were doing research on your book?
Well, we've mentioned some of them already, the 150 nicknames. It's the only body part that does that. Breasts are the only organ. And I was on an interview this morning with a doctor who was like, oh, you're right. It's the only organ. I mean, our breast milk, our blood actually turns into this customized immune system. And yet there's no doctor specialty for breasts. I mean, it's just bizarre. Also, put in your will if you want to wear a bra when you die, because most funeral homes automatically will put a bra on you. And I don't know about you, but I do not want to be strapped into a bra for all eternity.
Who knew?
Yeah, that's just, and things like, I mean, Dolly Parton and Sally Field, and I mean, you would not believe the women, respectable women who are in Playboy, because there's a certain time where that was expected for you to be famous. So there's a lot of really weird things, and just the number of bras that people have or are supposed to have, and that we supposedly wear the wrong sizes. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm like, I put on a bra as a special occasion today because I'm still wearing sports bras from COVID. So, I found a lot of funny things. That's why this book was, it hit #1 for feminist literature, and then other people call it a comedy. So it's, boobs aren't funny, but if we can make fun of them and make fun of ourselves, I think it allows us to listen a little more, like spoonful of sugar, and be more aware of what's happening, and not take ourselves so seriously, because that's the only way we're going to allow everybody into the same, attitude, and see, oh yeah, we all treat ourselves bad. And that's why I have, like, on this mug I give away for swag. In fact, if you want to pick a winner, I'll send somebody a mug. It says, love you.
Oh, that's really nice.
So I want you to love your boobs. I still look in the mirror and I think, but in a bra, they look great. So they're kind of scarred.
Yeah.
I gave up. I didn't have them fixed.
Well, and if they want to know more fun facts, curious facts, interesting
Yeah.
facts, they just have to get the book and read it, right?
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, so I know our time is running late, but we did want to leave it open for Q&A. So thank you, Leslie, for sharing a little bit about A Boob's Life, out today in paperback, A Boob's Life, How America's Obsession Shaped Me and You. Yes, so let's go ahead to the questions. Let's see, here we go. Jennifer, in your book, A Boob's Life, you write that girls become women on a continuum, a sliding scale of emotional and physical development. Instead of raising our daughters to expect equal rights, we need to teach them how to fight for them. What advice would you give to educators in advocating for our girls and women?
That's a really tricky question, because we do have Title X, and yet it's allocating the money for sports, which helped a lot of women. We still don't have the ERA. We're still not guaranteed rights. And I think that when I grew up in Ohio, it was really a great school. I was taught that I could do anything I put my mind to. And then when I got in the real world, it wasn't that way. And so I think we just have to keep fighting and keep voting. We have to vote for our rights. That's the most important thing that can change.
Thank you. Thank you. And Jennifer typed in, count me in for the mug winner. So I didn't want to ignore that generous offer. So we will pick a winner, thanks to your generosity. After the event, we'll keep the website open for at least an hour more. We'll enter everybody once. And if you purchase a copy of A Boob's Life, we'll enter you twice. So, and we'll let you know at the end of the day, today or tomorrow, if you are a winner, and Leslie will ship that out to you. Thanks again, Leslie.
Sure.
Next question for any of you. What kind of symptoms should we look for? I did type in the chat box the American Cancer Society link on symptoms, but I'm just wondering, based on your personal experiences, is there anything? I know some of you didn't have symptoms, but do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, I think one of the things that that the American Cancer Society would tell you is that there are some changes in your breasts that would signal a problem. For instance, discharge that doesn't seem, that doesn't have a logical cause to it. Skin changes in the skin, and obviously lumps underneath the skin. I mean, I think for a lot of people, feeling a lump is the first thing that signals that something's wrong. So I would say to continue to do breast self-exams, but I think the most important thing is to go in for mammograms.
Thank you. Thank you. And on that same vein, Maria also asked about food. Is there a list of food to eat or not eat that's recommended to help with cancer? And again, I did type in a link to the American Cancer Society as they address that. I know, Kristin, you mentioned the wine thing. I don't know if you guys want to elaborate a bit on that at all, or.
I eat a lot more vegetables and a lot less processed food. And when I was doing research, and I don't know if you probably, it sounds like you've seen this, Jamie, there was a thing about breast milk and, whether it's toxic now, all the stuff that we're drinking, it's still very, very healthy. But, I know a lot of people just really feel like a vegetarian diet is good. I need some protein, so I try to eat organic a lot more. I would say I spend more money on healthier food. And that's one reason why also breast cancer, we need to give money to more lower income people and help, because it's very expensive. And Susan G. Komen, a lot of great sources help people who can't. But for me, I hardly ever eat the same things my husband eats anymore. I eat a lot of vegetables and try to keep it healthy, like Kristin said.
Thank you. Jennifer was asking, she mentioned that she was most profoundly impacted by your chapters on cancer and domestic abuse. Leslie, can you speak to women who are dealing with or know someone dealing with domestic abuse?
Well, that's one that hits home, because it was something that came up in my personal life. And I felt that it was because my role as a woman, once I had children, my contract with my husband, my first husband, obviously changed drastically, because suddenly he didn't see me as a sexy person. And I had met him as an executive. And then I was the mom, and I had to do the mom things. I had the breasts. I didn't make as much money. I shifted power. And then when I wasn't able to do that, he was, the abuse started, and the emotional abuse. I couldn't even say the word abuse until long after we were divorced, and I had a restraining order. And I have a daughter who's been in a horrific situation since then, who's that guy's actually in prison right now. And I'm still dealing with it. And it's so hard for women. I mean, even the experience that I had, to see other people go through it, we have to be, I think, not only aware of the red flags, and I do have a list in my book. And once someone's in a situation, you can't pull them out. It makes it worse for them. So you have to be really careful and follow the guidelines of people. But I think the way our bodies look and the lack of power we have because of our lack of making money. And I say all the time, I think that mothers should make Social Security. We need to have parity for money, because without that power, we get taken advantage of, and we get dependent on people and stay longer in relationships that are not healthy for us. But there is a whole page with warning signs, and young women, especially online, are more than ever, in abusive relationships and don't know, because the love songs say, oh, you'll do this and you'll do that. And it's like, being independent and autonomous and earning your own living and having that strength of mind, and a family who's going to support you no matter what you go through, is really important. But the domestic hotline, all those numbers are in that one chapter of my book. So
thank you for providing that important information, Leslie. Dee made a comment that my boobs are so dense that it's hard to decipher if it is a lump, which I think is a common problem, and thus, the importance of mammograms, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And hopefully an MRI. Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
ultrasound. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they're saying breast density, if you have dense breasts, you're actually more prone to having breast cancer. So it sounds like a nitpicky detail, but it's actually a very important consideration when you're making decisions about your treatment. And if they offer like a next step, like an add-on to the regular mammogram, take it, I would say. I had dense breasts, and I didn't take that seriously. And now I realize it's actually telling you a lot. So take advantage of that information if you have it.
Thank you. Thank you. And I know we've run out of time, and we could talk to you guys all night. So we'll close with one question, one last question, and then final thoughts from all of our authors is from Anissa for all authors. Has your writing changed because of your cancer journey? Great question, Anissa. And you want to start, Leslie?
Well, I can say that when I was first diagnosed, I remember being in the room and being so shocked, standing in front of this doctor and thinking, have I said everything I want to say? Did my last book say anything? And I had just finished a book called What Are the Mother Knows? And it was about how far a mother would go to protect her daughter. And I thought, would that be on my headstone? Would I be proud? Does everyone in my life know that I love them? And the answer was yes. And it gave me such a sense of peace of, okay, if I have to die, I'm okay with that. And then it freed me to really do whatever I could to be alive. And even now, I wish I could write, a million romance novels and stuff that is, got me in a niche, but I can't now. I feel like it's really important. I feel like I'm on this earth to write things that have a meaning to me and good themes. And all of you have really important themes in all of our books. And I know for me, it's made it just more meaningful. Everything I write, I want it to matter, and I want people to live better lives because of it.
Laura.
Yeah, after it was 2006, of course, when I had my situation, and there was no social media. And so I was approached, I think I had a blog on my website, which nobody came to because I was nobody, but I started to blog about it. And I was then approached by a website called Health Central, which was owned by, I think, Gannett at the time. And they asked me to do a blog that would appear on their site. And they got an illustrator to make it almost like a graphic blog, graphic. So I wrote a lot about my diagnosis and my surgery. It was humorous, but also like very, the sort of humor of being told by one person that I had cancer, and the next person, no, it's stage 0. No, it is, as Jamie was saying, is it not? And then that appeared, and so I wrote about it at the time. I have not written about it since, really.
Thank you, Laura. Jamie?
Just going back to, I forget whoever mentioned stress earlier, Leslie, it might have been you. I do believe stress is a factor, and this business is very easy to lose perspective. And I try now, like, no deadline and no book, I'm going to let that, bring me to like a stress level that is unhealthy. Like, there is no career or job that is worth that. And I don't think I would understand that if I hadn't gone through this. So it was another sort of silver lining, which is perspective.
Kristin?
Yeah, I think it's probably, Anissa, that's a great question. I think it's probably too soon to know whether it has changed my writing, but I suspect that it will, because it's changed me as a person. And kind of similar to what Jamie said, this is a stressful industry. As you mentioned, I have a book out in 4 weeks. This is the time in the process that I would normally be freaking out, like trying to like micromanage every little thing to control like every little factor that I could, worrying about numbers. And I'm still doing some of that, but it feels different. It doesn't feel like life or death worrying, which it used to feel like that. I think this has put everything in perspective for me. And I realized that all you can do in life is your best, and then let things unfold the way they're going to unfold. Just the way we talked about making the decisions about our treatment. You have to go into it and do your best, and then kind of let it happen, and do your best every step along the way. So I think it has changed my perspective on that. And I hope that that is something that continues. And that this is one of the gifts that cancer has given me.
Wow, that's amazing. And I think you're all incredibly talented writers. So if your writing changes, it'll still be great, just different. We look forward to see what's coming next. So one last comment I'm going to read, which kind of sums up our event, and then I'm going to ask each of you for your final thoughts. From Diane: this has been an amazing chat. I am in the middle of the book now, and it is so informative. Luckily, at my mammogram this year at age 77, nothing suspicious was found. Yay, Diane. I realize how blessed I am. I'm really enjoying listening to your journeys, as if I had many friends that have also experienced the same journey. So once again, you guys are touching so many people with your courageous decision to come forward and talk intimately about your own experiences. So thank you. So I just want to leave this open to final thoughts for each of you. Before I do, I want to thank everybody in the audience, our adventurers, as we love to call them. We're grateful to you always for your support of all things literary, of our authors, of Adventures by the Book, of their books. You guys are always generous book buyers, and I hope that you will consider buying a copy of all of these authors' books today, because they've taken the time out of their busy schedule to share their story, and that's not easy to do. It's not easy to live through what they've experienced and then to come forward and share that. It's remarkable. And I thank you all so much. I thank the adventurers and our authors. So final thoughts from each of you. Jamie, let's start with you.
Oh my, thank you, Leslie, for bringing us together, because I think it reminds me that it's not something I have to just kind of put in the back burner and not think about. Like, this is the first time I think I've talked about it at length since this whole thing went down. So book community, female community, I'm grateful. So thank you for bringing me into this tonight.
Thank you, Jamie. Laura?
Yeah, same. I'm so honored to be part of Kristin's event and then Leslie's offshoot event. And congratulations, Leslie, on your book and paperback. And I think the thing I would say now is really like looking at us four here and all the people who are watching or who will watch the taping of this, is that no one experience sums it up. We are completely different. It happens at different ages, completely different seriousness of diagnoses in terms of, a stage 0 is a little bit different than a stage 3. And that when you deal with your friends who are going through it, listen more than you talk. Let them have their feelings and don't try to tell them what to feel or eat this or don't eat that. It's just to be as Kristin had said, just check in and be a support, but that it's just everyone's experience is different and everyone's feelings are valid. So it's my thought.
Good point. Thank you, Laura. Kristin.
Leslie, thank you for having us here tonight. And Susan, thanks for putting this on. You do such great events, and it's wonderful that you give us the forum to be able to talk about this and have this kind of a frank, honest discussion, because I do think this helps people. And so, as I said before, I do hope that you'll consider picking up A Boob's Life, because I think it's important. I think we're better armed for the future when we know more about ourselves and about the world around us. And I think this book helps us on both fronts. So I think it's a great book to get for yourself. I think it's a great book to get for Mother's Day. And I hope that you'll support Adventures by the Book by buying A Boob's Life tonight.
Thank you, Kristin, and best wishes on your book launch. We'll be shipping out hundreds of books. I know that with place. So Leslie, final thoughts go to you. Congratulations again on the book launch.
Gosh, thank you. You know, I never intended to write anything about boobs or about breast cancer. When I was finishing treatment, I wrote a modern love column for the New York Times, and I thought, one and done, I am out. I don't want to be cancer girl. I don't want to be identified this way. I want to forget about it, just like Jamie said. And it wasn't until that night, you know, and I got out of the shower and realized, okay, this is part of who I am and how it's totally affected me. My breasts are part of the deal. That I realized that I guess I'm gonna have to write about it. I didn't keep a journal. I didn't blog about it. And when the chapters in the book that are about it, only 2, but they're big chapters of 20. I remembered every single emotion, every sensory detail, everything that happened through the entire treatment. And it just boggled my mind. And so now I don't feel so dismissive of the experience. I feel like this is a universal thing that women deal with. And I'm so grateful to be able to talk about it and talk about how women live, just so we can be aware of this multifaceted life that we have without having secrets, because I think we're stronger together. And, you know, communication makes all the difference. So I'm just incredibly grateful. This was Kristin's idea to do this program after I just happened to reach out with her during the treatment. And then she invited me on the Susan G. Komen project. And then, well, let's do it today. And I could not be more grateful. And that's been my whole experience with this disease, is that we women are stronger together. We care about each other. We are this incredible community, and we deserve to live with so much grace and enjoy every single day. And that's just the most profound thing. I'm so grateful every day that I'm alive, that I beat this, and that I can share my experience and try to help other people. And thank you so much for Susan for Adventures by the Book, and doing so much and donating books and just, I mean, I have to tell you, people who are still hanging with us, no one's getting paid for any of this, you know, and books don't make a lot of money. We work really hard because we have a passion to create this art and to tell these stories that matter to us, and hope that they can make you feel better about your own life. So thank you so much, so much. And for those of you who are mothers, happy Mother's Day. For those of you who have mothers, you know, they did a lot for you, and it's a wonderful week to celebrate. It should be every day. But meanwhile, I just will leave you with, you know, love your boobs. There you go.
Thank you. Beautiful words to end on. Thank you, Leslie. And thanks to all of you. And yes, there is a recording available. Thanks to, was it Leslie?
Yes.
You recorded it. Thank you so much for doing that. She'll send me the link, and we will send it out probably tomorrow morning. You'll get the link. You'll find out who the winner of the mug is. And we will leave that website open for book purchases. So thank you all again. If you're interested in Adventures by the Book, go to our website, adventuresbythebook.com. You can travel with an author. We're going to Alaska this summer and staying in an author's home, only 4 people. He's a renowned wilderness tour guide and photographer. If you're a writer of any level, you can come to our Eastern Sierras writing retreat this October, when the aspen leaves are changing in all their glory. Feel inspired to write. If you're in Southern California, check out our next in-person event with New York Times bestselling author Lisa C. And mark your calendars, February 18th, 2024. Yes, that's 2024 for Superbook 5, which is coming your way, and more to be announced later. So thank you again, all of you authors. You are brave, courageous, wonderful, talented. We love you. And thank you to our adventures. Everyone have a good night. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Congratulations, Leslie.
Thank you.